Okie doke. Cool. Hello guys, welcome to the Pig Daily, episode number 113. And today we're going to be doing a Terran build. Been a while since I've done a Terran build order. Of course, you guys know there's been a lot of build order focused dailies lately. The reason for that is because we want to create an awesome build database. There's just not enough guides for Legacy of the Void. Early on, things were too complex, too fast-paced. We kind of couldn't figure out how to write proper guides that much. But now there's a lot of good build orders out there from pro gamers. We kind of understand the ins and outs and what to scout. So we're finally putting out a whole lot of build orders. And I realized I didn't have anything to do with like doing a standard Terran vs Protoss opening. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today, guys. So we've got a replay here. This is game 2 between Maru and a Showtime from the WESG Global Finals. This is the semi-final of a $400,000 tournament. So this was actually like a $100,000 match or $70,000 or something insane like that. And Maru just played this so well. And this game especially, a very typical opening, but one which is very powerful, very flexible, and kind of just allows a good Terran player to shine. So Maru goes for a gas first, so depot, gas, and then barracks. Now with this build, Maru's going to be going for a fast Reaper Scout, so he's not going to be going for an SCV Scout at all. If you're someone who prefers to SCV Scout, you could very easily still just SCV Scout with this opening, and it would work out pretty much the same. Yep. So you don't want to take a second gas. You want to pause on 19 supply building SCVs so you can make an orbital the moment the barracks finishes. Start a Reaper immediately as well. And your SCV that was building the barracks, immediately just you queue that up to rally down to mine a little batch of minerals and put down a command center on 400 minerals. Behind this, you are going to go straight for a factory and then a second gas, a reactor, and a depot. So second gas, reactor, and depot. A lot of people get tempted to put down that second depot or that reactor straight away. It's okay. Remember, because you're building the reactor, you're not building any units other than SCVs right now. And it's okay to hit a very small supply block on your next SCV. It's most important to get this second gas out, otherwise you can't get out your tech units, which you need to pressure. Meanwhile, your Reaper will go across the map. This is the first piece of scouting you'll get, so you need to go straight to the natural and say, is there an expansion down? Okay, there is. Sweet. I don't need to worry about any craziness. If, of course, you see no expansion, you might do something like immediately build a bunker. The moment this command center finishes, you'll lift it off and lift it into your main base. Probably put down an engineering bay as well if you can verify that it's going to be like oracles or DTs or something like that. But for the moment, just on standard position, up against an expand build, you are going to start building those Marines 2 at a time. You're going to start, of course, building the, Widow Mines here. Starport goes down first. Remember, prioritize Starport. That'll delay the Widow Mine by just a couple seconds. And then you're going to be going straight for a medevac as soon as that starport's done. So this looks like your pretty standard opening. Basically, you're just going to go for a Marine mine drop and then a Liberator afterwards. It's like a very basic pressure, but the reason you want to be going for this sort of stuff in this matchup is because Protoss players can play incredibly greedy. Like, they can play disgustingly greedy. And as a Terran player, it really is your job to make sure you're pressuring the Protoss and finding those openings to either just punish them for that greed or at least just double check, hey, you weren't being too greedy, were you? Let's actually scout with this aggression, but let's also potentially find some damage. So guys, it is 2 Widow Mines out of that factory. A starport starts the medevac. Now, when this medevac is getting close to finished, usually about 3 minutes 30, you drop a second barracks. That's very important to get that second barracks started on time. Notice, this is something where, okay, this is actually like one of these little things, right? With Terran build orders, you have these like niche little things where if you're like a high level player, you actually want to do things slightly differently to if you're like a mid or lower level player. So this is a little tip for guys who are masters or above and want to get this build exact and are really refined in how they're executing. For you guys, you want to delay building extra depots. Notice he's already at 42 supply, hasn't even started an extra depot yet. So he's going to be coming very close to getting supply blocked. So he's cutting that close, knowing that he knows the exact moment when he wants to build that depot. Oh, he has actually started, sorry. But he still started it quite late. Point still stands. Let me just show you guys. So if you're like a lower level player, you get to like 30, 35 supply out of 46, you're already building your depot because you constantly want to be building those depots ahead of time to make sure you don't get supply blocked. But for Maru, he's going to start it right on 40 supply, and he's going to, you know, save his money to make sure he can get out things like the barracks and all that sort of stuff. So he does still actually start the depot before the barracks, but he's keeping focus on constant SCV production and that sort of stuff. With these sort of build orders, if you change up the order ever so slightly to say, oh, you know what, sometimes I get supply blocked because I'm not as good as Maru, you can always just delay, you know, the second barracks slightly, or you can speed up the depot slightly. Just generally, you're going to find sometimes the things don't time out quite as well. But if you are just playing like a sort of macro-based style, as a player, you know, who kind of struggles with that sort of stuff, it's important to just focus on your basics above hitting the same exact, say, game timer where Maru puts his buildings down. It's more important for you to do things like keep up SCV production, don't get supply blocked. Those fundamentals are always what's going to be the most important thing when you're following a build order. And this is something a lot of Terran players who I've talked to and watched that I've noticed have struggled with, so definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, guys, so second barracks, you get a tech lab on the factory because we're going to build a siege tank to keep ourselves safe from any counter pressure. Now, the reason that's important is because with this, notice there's no tech lab on a barracks. You're not going to have stim for a long time. So you're going to go Widow Mine and 6 Marines are going to boost across the map. Now, notice there's already a Widow Mine burrowed at the third. This is really cute. This makes sure the Protoss player can't get a super early third up. And it's also in position for this next maneuver. Now notice there's a Liberator and a siege tank building behind this. So that Liberator is going to rally straight across the map up here as well, so it can follow up. But what Maru is going to do is he's going to distract in the main, and right as this starts unloading, he unburrows that Widow Mine, and he's queued that up to run into the natural and burrow there. So you want to try and find somewhere where you can get in range of a probe line, but out of range of one of the enemy pylons. If they've got 3 pylons around the main base, you might want to just sit behind an assimilator or something like that. The most important thing here is to be annoying, be irritating, try to get some damage done. And you'll notice, because the attention is all there, it's very hard for Showtime to defend against this Widow Mine. Indeed, if you're not playing Showtime, most players at the not Showtime level will just lose like a lot of probes here. As it is, still gets 2 probe kills, not a bad little bit of pressure. And then he's got the Liberator coming up behind that. And this is literally it. He does save the Marines, or at least a few of those, picks them up, keeps them there. But this is the opening. It's just a sort of 1-2 prong pressure, 1-2 punch pressure with a third little punch coming in here with the Liberator. It's not as committed as some other builds where you also have a Widow Mine drop, then the Liberator comes, or that sort of stuff. It hits a little bit faster, and it's much more secure at home, though. It's very simple to play. Of course, this is the old Liberator where it 2-shot Stalkers. It does get a Stalker there, but in total, not really getting a large amount of damage done. And I know a lot of players look at this sort of situation and they're like, oh my god, you know, he only lost a few probes, this isn't doing well. Or often when they're doing the build, they say themselves like, okay, I didn't do enough damage, I didn't kill enough. But you've got to look at everything in context. There's no like, you need to kill 12 probes to make this worthwhile. It's all about what is the Protoss doing, are you keeping them honest? And we can see in this game that Showtime is being incredibly honest. He still doesn't have a third base past 5 minutes. He's going straight for Colossi. He's just locked in on 2 bases, and in terms of the worker count, it's actually an SCV lead for Maru, 42 SCVs to 41 probes. And whenever you're up in SCVs, you are well ahead in income because, okay, that's exaggerated because workers were pulled away from the Liberator. So that income graph is not actually that extreme, but because you've got mules, you're definitely going to be, you know, mining a good amount more. We can see, there we go. That's a more realistic advantage. Even there, I think there's 3 mules down right now. What do we got? 2 mules, yeah. But even there, big advantage when you're on equal workers as Terran to Protoss. So that's actually a very nice thing there. And of course, Maru being Maru, he's going to keep poking with this medevac. Not something I'd advise to most players. The reason he's able to keep doing that is because he spotted that it was fast Colossi early on. And he knows that Showtime has actually skipped Blink, he's skipped Stargates. There's no Void Rays, there's no Phoenix, there's no Blink, there's none of those things which can jump on top of his drops. Anyway, guys, let's continue talking about the build order for now. Let's go back. While all that pressure was going on, what exactly do you do? Now, this is an important moment. So you have the second barracks down just before you go in, or as your medevac's kind of getting to halfway across the map and beyond. This is how I like to think about it. So you load up your medevac, And as your medevac's getting across the map, obviously you're continuing to build depots at home. But as your medevac gets about halfway, you start to get a little bit more money in the bank. So you've got a tank, you've got a Liberator, you've got that second barracks. Notice this SCV here for Maru. He's waiting to have 150 minerals. He's constantly building SCVs. He's not cutting them. But there we go. The moment he gets 150 minerals, third barracks goes down. And he wants to build that next to the factory because he's going to swap these around. This other second barracks is also going to build a tech lab immediately. So this is going to allow him to get stim and combat shields and marauder production going. And he's really going to catch up with those upgrades. Behind that, he also wants to be going for a third gas. So you want to be doing this just before you go in. Now, Maru, he's unloading his medevac while he puts the gas down. If you are a mere mortal, drop the gas a little bit before your drop goes in, a few seconds, so you've got time to put all your focus on the drop. But yeah, you go for that. We're going to swap this factory out. Factory will want to build a reactor for itself, so it'll probably go up here, build a reactor. The starport will also build a reactor. Because you've built all your early pressure units out of those structures, and now it's time to set up your production. So it's important to swap these around and get everything going. So reactor, reactor, this barracks really needs to swap. Even Maru is not a perfect human when he's microing two forms of harassment at once. And we can see there, guys, stim, combat shields, double marauder production. Now from here, there's a bit of flexibility in terms of how you want to play the style. Obviously, that's the opening done. You're at 3 barracks, you've got a factory, a starport, you've got a lot of SCVs on 2 bases, you've got 3 gases. Where do you go from there? Well, you could just keep building units, add 2 more barracks, and just do like a 2-base all-in, right? Of a bio Liberator mine or something like that. You could very easily drop a 3rd command center immediately as well. What we're going to see in this version is the sort of macro direction, and we're just going to very quickly sum up how Maru adds his structures, and then we're going to move on to the second part of the daily, which is, okay, we've talked about the build order. This is one of the most solid openings you can learn as a Terran player because it allows you to put on pressure without overcommitting. You can really delay a Protoss's 3rd base, or if they go for it too fast, you can potentially punish them. But after that point, it gives you a lot of possibilities and flexibilities, and because this is a Maru replay, we want to kind of dwell on Maru's awesomeness. We want to look at how beautifully he plays this, and we're just going to kind of look at multi-prong. We're going to look at playing as a Terran against a Protoss player who focuses on a very different play style like Showtime does here. So notice there is a +1 weapons upgrade. So after going up to 3 barracks production, Maru has got an engineering bay, got his +1 weapons, and also dropped a 4th gas. And that's pretty important because, of course, your medevacs, your liberators, very important, and you've just added a whole lot of upgrades. So even if you're banking a bit of gas, once you start building, 2 medevacs at a time, 2 mines at a time, a couple hundred gas on upgrades, your gas bank depletes very quickly. Now, what we're going to see here is Maru just constantly building bio, no gaps in his production, pretty much. Also scans for observers, which is very important to try and deny the Protoss vision, and is especially powerful against the Showtime style here, where, as I said, he's really just focused on pumping out these powerful gateway units. But you'll notice there's no extra stuff going down for such a long time. Only now, at about 7 minutes, is the 3rd base going down. He's dropping, he's doing fighting, cool shit's happening. We'll come back and look at that in a moment. And this is what I really want to talk about, because this is important when it comes to learning the build. So, okay, you go 3 barracks, you could go to 5 barracks, or you could go for the 3rd command center. But there's also a few tweaks in here, and there's also something you should focus on. So before I go on to let's revel in Maru's awesomeness, let's talk a little bit about playing to your own skill level when you're learning a new style, and learning in stages. And this is something that's very important. So especially if, say, you're in Gold League, you're in maybe Silver League, something like that, you've still got a lot of fundamentals to focus on. You don't want to try and copy every single thing Maru does, but you can still learn from a sort of build order like this, but you've got to play to your own skill level. Even for me, as a sort of top master, low GM Terran player, it's something where when I was learning this style, right, and I didn't get a lot of games on ladder, so I finally just grinded a whole lot of custom games and on the weekend playing some TvP. And I was like, okay, finally I'm getting some Protoss matches. Let's play this. And what I found is that I really struggled to both keep attacking the Protoss player while macroing well at home, because I was very new to the build and things weren't happening intrinsically. So one of the best things you can always do when you're learning is limit your focus. So stage 1, basically you're learning the build, you're not that good at it yet. What you really want to do is you want to just practice the opening and not focus on your pressure. So the first time you go in with that Widow Mine running into the natural and the drop in the main, you literally just like click it in, minimal micro. You want to look at it for like 15 seconds. If they've got enough units to defend, you pick up, boost the medevac away from the main, go back to macroing. Or if they don't have enough units, you burrow the Widow Mine, you just A-move the Marines into the mineral line, look away. Don't micro it at all, because your focus is purely on your macro. And this is for your first like 10 games, right? So it's just like doing almost no micro, really focusing on your macro. Even if your pressures are just like running into their death because you're not watching them, that's fine. So that's the first step. But I think the next step after that is also very important, where the mid-game macro for a lot of Terran players, I find they really feel uncomfortable with it. They're so used to just kind of trying to kill Protoss on 2 bases, going up to 3 bases, getting a lot of production is very awkward for them. So what I suggest for you guys, if you've got that problem, is something which I was doing when I was practicing this build, and you can actually kind of power up a little bit. And this is also a strategic choice that you can make. Now, powering is where what you say, if we go back to about 6 minutes, it's where you say, I'm actually going to cut unit production for a period in order to invest in more production and more economy and that sort of stuff. So say at this moment, Maru's like, okay, I've done my early pressure. I don't think it's important to pressure right now. I'm going to delay these 2 medevacs and a few of these Marauders Marines. Have a few gaps in the production, and I'm just going to drop a 3rd command center immediately. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to restart production. Oh, maybe there's a slight gap in production, and I'll add 2 more barracks. I'll get my 4th and 5th barracks. So he's basically, sacrificing units in the short term in order to just get the production up easier. And this is something I think you should really do when you're first learning the build as well, after you've gone through that first stage of not microing your pressures, where you say, you know what, I can't really control the aggression. Having these units out on the map, not the most important right now. Let's just focus on getting my 3rd command center up a bit earlier. Let's focus on getting that 3-base setup of getting, okay, 5 barracks. I've got the starport. I've got the factory. Let's add the 2nd engineering bay as time goes on. Let's add the armory as well with that. Let's see when Maru chooses to do that. So we can see he goes +1 armor here. 4th and 5th barracks. You see just how delayed these are? And this is because Maru, he's got the mechanics to get the value out of these units. He's hitting in 3 places at once on that minimap. But, you could go for these upgrades a hell of a lot earlier than this. You can go for that 3rd command center a hell of a lot earlier than this. And that actually makes perfect sense for you when you're first learning it, because you're just getting used to the macro. And because you don't have the APM to get the value out of your aggressive units, it's more important to get up more stuff, more economy, more upgrades. And that's what's actually going to win you games. So definitely play to your level. If you're not someone who's able to control non-stop multi-prong, you don't need to be absolutely 100% of the time building units. Skipping just 1 cycle of bio to squeeze in a 3rd command center, a fast 2nd eBay, and an armory can be a fantastic move for you. All right, guys. So that's the end of the build order segment of today's daily. From here, let's just revel in the awesomeness that is Maru and why he is indeed such a based god of Terran. And at the same time, why he's a bit suicidal in his play style. If the opponent happens to have the right answer to what he's doing, sometimes he will dive in face first to his death. But lately, that hasn't been happening at all. He's been doing really well. Just kind of looking at my notes. Yeah, those last points about learning to your level. Like the reason I especially talk about that is because whenever I'm talking about styles like this, I feel like the most common question I get from Terran players and the most common complaint about TvP is they say, oh, you know what, I'm not as good as Maru, I'm not as good as TY. I can't just hit 3 bases at once over and over again. Like, I don't have the multitasking to do that. Protoss just gets up this one big army that's too strong. Like, I just can't win. And what I always tell these players is the same thing, where it's like, well, actually, as long as you do like a little bit of light pressure in the early game to make sure they're not mega greedy, all you need to do is macro well, and your 1 big timing attack, like, it still should have a really good chance of working. The problem those players are having usually is they're kind of caught in between 2 worlds of they're not really working on their macro that much, and they're not really improving their micro that much because they're trying to focus on both at once, and they don't have like muscle memory for either of them. So they just end up like microing frantically for a minute and floating 2,000 minerals. So I think really getting the macro down and then steadily improving your micro becomes a lot better, because at that point, what you do, right, is you go in for a pressure, you micro for 10-15 seconds, pick up, pull out, You zoom back to your base, and it's all muscle memory because you've memorized your macro. You're like, it's time to add 3 barracks. It's time to add an eBay, get that upgrade going. Bam, land the 3rd base. You kind of just go through those actions, and it takes such a short amount of time, and then you can zoom back to your micro. And your micro, on the other hand, it always changes. It's always by feel. Every situation's different. Every map is different. Every opponent is different. So that's something where you've got to really be able to like adjust on the fly. But macro is something which stays the same every single game with a style like this. So working on that will kick ass for you. So anyway, guys, part 2 of the daily. Maru's a god. Let's look at Maru being a god and being awesome and sexy. So Maru's going to send out this triple drop, killed that observer there in the natural, and he's going to go look for some damage. And now this is really cool because I've mentioned it before, Showtime, he's skipped out on Blink. His Twilight Council is only finishing up at 7 minutes. He's going for the strong frontal army, Colossi. Notice he's got his units spread out to try and defend drops. He's really relying on Pylon Overcharge. He's relying on this Colossus with their range. And Maru's just looking for this damage, and he's just going super ham, super hungry. There's a lot of these engagements where it looks like it's kind of favoring Showtime quite a bit. I would say like Showtime's positioning and the split of his units has been pretty splendid so far. Look at that, keeps the sentries alive. So these medevacs are going to come in here. Great overcharge on that, and you think like, oh god, okay. Maru's not really finding the most amazing damage just yet. But he just keeps poking in and putting on this pressure because he's got the micro to do it. And what has this done? Really, what has that done? Units lost, that was not great for Maru. That was far from it. But he's elongated the pressure. Now this does 2 things. Whenever you drag out pressure, you screw up your opponent's macro because they just can't look around to like build gateways and, you know, move probes around. But it also opens up opportunities, if you're fast enough like Maru is, to bring in a force from another angle. And that's exactly what we see here. And this is where things start to get slightly dicey for Showtime. If those Colossi weren't there, things would have been very hard. But already loses a few probes. Loses a bit of mining time. Maru, once again though, gets cleaned up. Has to pick up. But look at this. Just... he knows there's no blink, and he starts to play this like Terrans used to play against Zerg before Queens got their anti-air range buff. This is so sick. He just keeps going in. He's still got these 2 Marauders here. He's got these. And this is a specific reaction. This is not something you want to do every game, guys. This is not something you might ever be capable of doing. But if you are playing someone who sacrifices their anti-air mobility in TvP, you really can afford to be a massive douchebag with your drops. And that really is your goal. The Protoss is saying, I'm going to have Colossi up so fast. I'm going to have the sickest frontal army so early. And it really is your job as the Terran player to say, screw you. I'm just going to abuse the maneuvering then, the mobility. I'm going to keep hitting those mineral lines from all different angles and see what I can get done. And finally, Maru starts to find openings. These are very valuable units right now. Showtime loses 2 Stalkers. Looks like he's going to lose 2 Stalkers and 2 Sentries. And the medevacs just will not stop. The overcharge energy is out. No blink. There's just no way to move between these bases. So Maru here staying way longer than you ever would against, you know, blink, against Phoenix, anything like that. And once again, he's opening these holes. What's really cool, and what you kind of don't notice if you're just watching the fighting, is basically how is he doing this? He's got a rally point just to his natural. It's not like he's rallying these units across the map. But check this out. He just has his units rallied there, right next to his own production. And then every now and then, a couple medevacs come out, and he just kind of like looks back here when he's got spare APM. So let's put this on Maru's camera for a second, because this is kind of beautiful. Okay, so he moves back both medevacs. And then he says, oh, can I drop there? No, I can't. And now he's... oh my god, he's going to... okay, yeah, he's unloading just to get the value out of the units. Tries to pick up in the other medevac. Stays a little bit long. Okay. Yeah, he's still looking for angles. Okay, no, whoa. When did he load these medevacs up? What the shit? Okay, I'm watching this on Maru's camera. Okay. Okay, so we're on Maru's camera. When does these... okay, there we go. There's like this 1 second where he just looks back there, clicks on those units, clicks them on that medevac, and just boosts them across the map. Interestingly, hotkeys wise, Maru actually has not that many units on, so he's got 2 medevac drop hotkeys, yeah. So he controls some of it manually. But he had these 2 medevacs on 1 hotkey. You can see that's hotkey number 2, which is about to go down to no units on it. And hotkey number 1 is this drop up here. Now, as these units get in there, I think he will put those on number 2. Oh no, he's saying this is the main army. I'm going to put this on number 1. And he's actually just de-hotkeyed this drop up here. Okay, interesting. Either way, basically he's just going to keep picking up units and rallying them across the map over and over and over again, which is very cool. And because you can kind of find the openings already to whittle down the unit count of Showtime, Showtime right now is starved for anti-air, like really bad. He has 6 Stalkers. So even though he's getting up Colossi, he's getting up Adepts, he's getting up Disruptors now as well, he's got that great frontal units. His mobility is sorely lacking. So more and more drops going to come across the map. I love this by Maru. He has a few extra medevacs, not enough units to go in them. So he actually sends a fake drop on the right-hand side, hoping that Showtime will see this and send too many units to respond to it. So Showtime's going to see these drops. He's going to be like, okay, does he send extra units over? He sends the Mothership Core over here to help support. And then Maru sees this army here, and this is just absolute friggin' genius. Look at this shit. Look at this. Just drops right on top of the army. Only Maru does this because he's a psychopath. Like, I'm actually convinced that he might be insane. But he's just so good at recognizing this stuff. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. Because he basically just does way too much damage here. Kills off all the important tech units. Almost all the Colossi are gone, and Adepts and Stalkers kind of suck versus these units. A single Colossi on its own, not that frightening against Marauders. 19 probes go down, the next side goes down. Of course, there was a drop that came in as well. Let's go back just a few seconds. This drop came in, boosts into the main base, and starts doing damage there. So why is this such a brilliant move? This is just Maru using that tempo from earlier on. So he catches Showtime at this point. Where he knows that he's whittled down Showtime's anti-air. He knows Showtime doesn't have that much mobile anti-air. So Showtime isn't confident in his ability to say zone out drops going in here. If you've got like 8 Stalkers here or something, you know they can't really boost past with drops as long as you've got either a Colossus to spot the high ground or an Observer, right? Because these drops will get blasted down, and then you can blink up there if you have to, and you're going to shoot them down, right? But because Showtime has been so far on the back foot, he actually might have enough Stalkers. If he just warped in a few more Stalkers, put them on the edge, he'd probably be able to do that. And then he'd be able to pull these units out of the main, because suddenly there's no way that a drop can get through to the main. Actually, I'm not sure how, if Stalkers there will be able to stop drops. But basically, any defensive force here, as long as you've got an Observer out here spotting the drop, it should be able to follow any medevacs that boost through and track them into the main base and kill the units while they're unloading. And that would allow him to have one strong point here, one strong point here. So his unit's split in 2 locations. The problem for Showtime is he's been so on the back foot, he doesn't have that confidence in his ability to have the mobility to shut down the drops, that he's got 5 Adepts and a Colossi just chilling in the main base. He's got a Colossi and a few Stalkers there, and there's actually, a single... And there ends up being only 2 medevacs on the right-hand side that keep these units over here. His Mothership Core's over here as well. He's starting to, build cannons across his bases. And because he just lacks that raw damage output of, having a lot of Adepts together, having enough Stalkers to shoot down medevacs, Maru can simply drop on top, because the units are going to be spread out as they unload from those medevacs. I know there's always one person in chat who doesn't know how to do this, by the way. If you want to unload while moving, you just press D and you left click. D, left click, D, left click, D, left click, D, left click, D, left click. And you can keep moving the medevacs around and they'll unload as they go. But you'll notice the units are pre-split, which means the Colossi splash does next to nothing. The Disruptor Shot didn't really do that much. The Widow Mines, if they don't get focused down, get to do massive damage because they're burrowing right on top of the enemy units. And there's just not enough raw damage output in Showtime's army to take advantage of the fact that Maru's units are dropping only a few at a time. So a very great play by Maru. He basically just hits from all sides, abusing the lack of anti-air. And then as Showtime gets Blink, as he starts getting kind of enough units to defend the different bases, but he's split in so many areas, that's when Maru just suddenly groups up almost everything, jumps right on top of that main army. And it doesn't need to be dropping on top. He very easily could have split his army there and just pounced on it with a normal stim. But Maru being Maru, he found a cool way to do a nice sexy doom drop, and it worked out beautifully. So yeah, that's Maru just being an absolute god. You guys can't necessarily constantly attack that much, but you can start to improve and work on this game as well. I feel like this is like the final stage of learning this build, is to aim to play like Maru does. Non-stop unit production, non-stop SCV production, and you just keep loading up medevacs and sending them across the map. You just keep doing that. And you can kind of play that at first, if you want, just on 2 base. You can do it as like, I'm just going to focus on aggression, and it's going to be kind of all in, but I don't want to have to focus on macro at home just so I can improve at it. But steadily, you'll start doing this while macroing. And you'll do it while on 3 base, and you're kind of hitting multiple bases, and you just kind of get this rhythm. Hit the main, hit the natural, hit the third. Do that once or twice, group everything together, and pounce on top of one section of their army that's all split up. You do this well enough, and Protoss players just are like, oh my god, how the hell do you stop this? This is so damn broken. So yeah, it's pretty cool if you can pull that together. But I like that we've identified a few different stages here of like figuring it out. This is a very solid opening build order. Definitely try it out. Let me answer a question or two in chat before I finish up. Quickly shout them out if you guys have any good questions. Great question from Fallen Angel, referring to the banter with TLO before. He says, are you a scumbag? Yes. Okay. There's no actual questions lately anyway. That's cool. Because no one cares. / the episode is so good we just cover absolutely everything anyway. But yeah, guys, hopefully this helps you out. We do have a question from Time to Tell. He says, Pig, how would Maru have dealt with an Oracle since he ran the first Widowmine across the map? I didn't see him scout for a Stargate. Really good question, and something I completely forgot to go over and show you guys because I was busy talking about the opening. So fantastic. Thank you for picking up on that. You definitely want to scout. Usually about 3 minutes is when you want to get a scout. About 2 minutes 50, you will send in your Reaper. So let's go back and I will show you guys this. So this is actually very important. About 2 minutes 50, you go in. Usually you want to go from the unexpected angle. For whatever reason, I mean, Showtime actually walls off here, so he can't go up there. But most of the time, you will click around behind their natural because their units will be covering the more frontal path. So we're going to see Maru does that here. And he just wants to get an idea of exactly what tech structure there is. And seeing this robo timing tells him everything he needs to know. Now, you guys might not understand Protoss build orders that well as a regular Joe Terran player. Average Joe Terran. But normally they drop their tech structure about 2 minutes 30. Thereabouts. So you can see this robo has been building for 17 seconds. So it dropped about 240, 243. Okay, cool. So that's the first structure. They're not going to have 2 tech structures this early, or if they do, one of them would only just be starting. There's no way they could have a Stargate and something else, because a Stargate is 150 gas. It costs so much gas. So if they went a Stargate and built a robotics this early, like the Oracle wouldn't even be able to start on time. So it's just like, it would be a very delayed, shitty Oracle build order. But whenever you see a very fast robo, and to some extent a Twilight as well, these are more signs of a more frontal, regular style from Protoss. If you don't see what's going on from the Protoss, that's where you start to go like, oh, you know, some players might drop a scan to see. Other players might just say, you know what? I'm going to leave one Widowmine in the mineral line rather than running this guy across the map. And that's going to keep me safe for a while. And then maybe by the time the medevac comes out, you'll just be like, you know what? An Oracle hasn't hit. It's getting to that time where, especially at like 4 minutes, maybe you hang around, maybe you delay a little bit if you want to be super safe. You're like, really, an Oracle should have hit by now if they were building one. Some people will go slightly delayed Oracles though. So yeah, you could hang around to like 4 minutes and then just go across the map. I'm kind of like, I don't want to give you guys set timings because I know someone's going to be playing against some Protoss who does some terrible build order and gets hit by like a 5-minute Oracle and they're like, you said it wouldn't come this late. But yeah, I think at that point, like, you'll have more units out behind this anyway. So if you don't get a chance to run the Widowmine across the map, that's a shame, but you know, that's why you just want to work on your Reaper scouting, and most of the time you will get an idea of what the Protoss is up to. Yeah, so I think that answers that one pretty well. Of course, you always need to play a lot more defensively against any sort of Oracle opening. Oracles always force you, as the Terran, to sit back a little bit more. You still would love to go pressure them, but you want to be a little bit more careful as well. Because, like, for instance, if you go in with a Liberator and they've chosen to build a Void Ray after the Oracle off that Stargate, the Void Ray can just come up, overcharge, and your Liberator's gone in like 2 seconds. So stuff can kind of go sideways pretty hard. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate the support. I will be streaming immediately after this, so don't go anywhere. If you guys on YouTube, though, thank you very much for hanging out. Shout out any questions on the Team Liquid thread, linked in the description in the YouTube comments below. I'll catch you guys next time. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and, of course, punch a penguin in the cankle. I'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.